When does it actually make sense to stop saving for retirement? For some of you watching this, you might be able to stop saving earlier than you think, way earlier, like years earlier. And that sentence probably just triggered something in your brain. Because if you're someone who's been religiously dumping 15 or 20 or 30% of your paycheck into retirement accounts for the last decade, the idea of stopping feels reckless. It feels irresponsible. It feels like the kind of thing financially illiterate people do right before they end up broke at 70. But here's what nobody tells you. There's a point where you've already won, where the math says you're done, where every additional dollar you save is a dollar you're stealing from your present self to give to a future version of you who's already going to be fine. And most people blow right past that point without noticing. They keep grinding, keep sacrificing, keep postponing trips and upgrades and experiences because they think one more year of savings will finally make them feel safe. Except it never does. Because the finish line keeps moving. The goalpost shifts. And before you know it, you've worked 5 extra years, missed 100 moments that mattered, and died with 3 times more money than you ever needed. I watched this happen to my own father. He saved more than enough, way more, and he spent his whole life in scarcity mode, eating frozen dinners in a paid-off house with a 7-figure net worth, because his brain never switched out of survival. He sacrificed everything for a nest egg he never got to enjoy. And when he passed earlier this year, it hit me. This isn't about math, it's about permission. It's about knowing when you've crossed the line and having the guts to actually live like it. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to figure out when you can stop. The 6 variables you need to know. The psychological traps that keep you saving even when you shouldn't. And the exact playbook to shift from grinding to living without torpedoing your future. Because here's the truth. Hitting your number should feel like freedom. But for most people, it just feels like a new kind of anxiety. Before we go further, do me a favor. If you're getting value from this, hit the subscribe button. It helps the algorithm show this to more people who need to hear it. And if you've ever felt stuck in that loop of just one more year, drop a comment. I read all of them, and it helps me know what to cover next. All right, let's get into it. Here's the structure of the problem. Phase 1 is what I call the grind to the number. You're in your 20s or 30s, maybe early 40s. You've absorbed enough personal finance content to know retirement is real. Social Security isn't going to cover your life. Pensions are dead. If you don't save, you're going to be that person working at 70 because you have to, not because you want to. So you start. You set up automatic transfers. You max your 401k match. You open a Roth IRA. You avoid lifestyle creep. You drive the same car for a decade. You skip the vacations your friends take. You become the person who meal preps on Sundays while everyone else orders delivery. And it feels good, virtuous even. You're building something. Your account balance climbs. 10,000 becomes 50. 50 becomes 100. 100 becomes 300. And somewhere in there, the goal stops being about freedom and starts being about the score. More is better. More is safer. More means you're winning. You check your balance obsessively. You feel a little hit of dopamine when the market's up. You feel dread when it's down. Your identity starts to wrap around this habit. You're not just someone who saves. You're a saver. It's who you are. Phase 2 is the psychological shift, and this is where it gets weird. You hit a milestone. Maybe it's $500,000. Maybe it's 800,000. Maybe you crack 7 figures. And instead of feeling free, you feel more anxious than ever, because now you have something to lose. When you had 20,000 saved, a market correction didn't matter. You had decades to recover. But when you have 700,000 in your portfolio, a 20% crash means you just lost 140 grand. That's more than most people make in a year. That's a down payment on a house. That's 2 years of your kid's college tuition. It's real money. And losing it feels catastrophic even though mathematically it's just noise. So you keep saving, not because the spreadsheet says you need to, but because stopping feels like giving up, like you're abandoning the very thing that got you here. And here's the kicker. The world around you shifts too. You start getting emails about wealth management services, ads for premium credit cards. Your bank wants to talk to you about investment opportunities. Friends who know you're doing well start asking for advice. You become the financially stable one in your group, the responsible one. And that identity matters. If you stop saving, what does that make you? Lazy? Reckless? Weak? The person who gave up right before the finish line? The emotional weight of that question is heavier than any calculator. My name is Charles, and I'm obsessed with how money actually works. Not the Instagram version where someone shows you their Lambo and tells you to buy their course. Not the doom and gloom version where talking heads tell you the economy's collapsing and you need to buy gold. I mean the boring, mechanical, unsexy reality of compound interest, withdrawal rates, sequence of returns risk, and why most people work longer than they have to because they're terrified of trusting their own numbers. Before we go any further, quick disclaimer. This is education and entertainment. It is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. I don't know your situation. I don't know your debt, your health, your family dynamics, or whether you're secretly planning to retire in Thailand or buy a boat or fund your nephew's startup. So, treat this video as a framework for thinking, not a prescription for action. If you want personalized advice, talk to an actual certified financial planner who can look at your specific numbers and help you build a plan that makes sense for your life. That said, let's dig into the mechanics. Here's how you figure out if you can stop saving. There are 6 variables you need to know. I know that sounds like a lot, but you probably already know 4 of them without even thinking about it. Variable 1 is your retirement number. How much money do you actually need saved to retire comfortably? This is the big one. Most people guess. They pull a number out of thin air. 2 million, 3 million, 5 million, whatever sounds safe. But there's a better way to calculate it, and it starts with knowing how much you want to spend every year in retirement. Variable 2 is your current net worth or portfolio size. How much have you already saved? Add up your 401k, your Roth, your taxable brokerage accounts, your high-yield savings if you're counting that. This is your starting point. Variable 3 is your expected rate of return. What can you reasonably expect your investments to grow at over the long term? 6% is conservative. 7% is closer to historical stock market averages. 8% if you're aggressive and mostly in equities. This number matters because it determines how much your current savings will compound before you retire. Variable 4 is your current savings rate. How much are you putting away every year? This is the number you're trying to figure out if you can reduce or stop entirely. Variable 5 is your retirement spending needs. This is critical. Your annual expenses in retirement. Not what you think you should spend, what you'll actually spend. Housing, food, travel, healthcare, hobbies, helping your kids, all of it. And variable 6 is other income sources, Social Security, pensions if you're lucky enough to have one, rental income, part-time work, anything that reduces how much you need to pull from your portfolio. Now here's the magic. If you know how much you want to spend per year in retirement, you can back into your retirement number using something called the 4% rule. Take your annual spending and multiply it by 25. That's your target. If you want to spend $80,000 a year, you need $2 million saved. If you want to spend $60,000 a year, you need $1.5 million. The logic is simple. If you withdraw 4% of your portfolio every year, and your portfolio keeps earning around 6 or 7%, the balance sustains itself. You don't run out. Inflation gets covered by growth. Your heirs probably inherit a pile of money when you die. It's not perfect. Markets crash, healthcare costs spike, inflation can run hotter than expected. But as a baseline framework, it works. And here's the question that changes everything. Do you need to keep saving to hit that number? Or is your current portfolio, left alone to compound, already going to get you there? Let me give you an example with real numbers. Let's say you're 38 years old. You've got $895,000 saved across all your accounts. 401k, Roth IRA, some taxable brokerage, maybe some high-yield savings. You want to retire at 65. That's 27 years of compounding. If your portfolio averages 6% a year, which is actually conservative compared to historical stock market returns, that $895,000 becomes $4.6 million by the time you're 65, even if you never add another dollar. Let me say that again. $4.6 million without contributing another penny. Now, if you're planning to spend $84,000 a year in retirement, which is $7,000 a month, and you're using the 4% rule, you only need $2.1 million saved. 84,000 times 25 equals $2.1 million. That's your target. But you're going to end up with $4.6 million? You're going to have more than double what you actually need to live comfortably. More than double. And that's assuming conservative 6% returns. If the market does what it's historically done and gives you 7 or 8%, you'll have even more. But here's what most people do in that exact situation. They keep saving. They keep putting away $36,000 a year every year because that's what they've always done. That's the habit. That's the identity. That's what responsible people do. And by the time they retire at 65, they don't have $4.6 million. They have $6 million. Maybe $7 million if the market cooperates. Which sounds incredible. Sounds like winning. Until you realize what it actually cost. $36,000 a year for 27 years, that's almost $1 million they saved when they didn't need to. $1 million they could have used to actually live. Think about what that buys. That's 27 years of taking your family on real vacations instead of weekend trips. That's upgrading your house, so you actually enjoy the space you live in every single day instead of waiting until you retire to do it. That's helping your kids with college without stress. That's saying yes to experiences and opportunities and moments that matter instead of saying not yet, we need to save. And for what? To die with 7 million instead of 4? To leave a slightly bigger inheritance? To have a higher number on a statement that nobody's going to care about at your funeral? That's the gap. That's the trap. The math says you can stop at 38 and be completely fine. The brain says, keep going, keep grinding, just to be safe. And most people listen to the brain, because the brain is wired for survival, not for living. Let me tell you 2 stories that illustrate this perfectly. First story is about a couple we'll call Daniel and Rebecca. Daniel is 45. Rebecca is 38. Combined income of $180,000 a year. They're doing well. Not rich, but comfortable. Upper middle class. And they've been aggressive savers since their late 20s. The kind of people who automated everything, set it and forget it. Money goes out of the paycheck before they even see it. Daniel has $272,000 in his 401k and $60,000 in a Roth IRA. Rebecca has $380,000 in her 401k and $42,000 in a Roth. They've got $60,000 sitting in high-yield savings, earning 4.5%, and $81,000 in a taxable brokerage account for flexibility. They own a home in Texas worth $395,000, $80,000 left on the mortgage, so $315,000 in equity. Add it all up and their total portfolio size is about $895,000. Net worth just over $1.2 million when you include the home equity. They want to spend $7,000 a month in retirement, $84,000 a year. They've thought about it, budgeted it. That number feels right, maybe a little conservative even. Using the 4% rule, multiply 84,000 by 25, they need 2.1 million saved. Now here's where it gets interesting. If they stop contributing to retirement accounts today, right now, and let that 895,000 grow at 6% for the next 20 years until Daniel hits 65, they'll have 3.79 million. Adjust for 3% annual inflation over 20 years, and that still gives them the purchasing power equivalent of about 2.1 million in today's dollars. They're done. They hit the number. They could stop maxing out retirement accounts tomorrow, and they would still be completely fine. Better than fine. They'd have a cushion, a margin for error. Room for the market to be worse than expected, or for them to live longer than average, or for inflation to run hotter. They won. But they don't stop. They keep saving $36,000 a year, every single year. Because it's what they've always done. Because stopping feels irresponsible. Because what if they're wrong? What if the projections are off? What if something happens? So they keep grinding. They keep saying no to things. No to the Europe trip their kids have been asking about for 3 years. No to the kitchen remodel because the current one is functional, even though Rebecca hates it. No to helping Daniel's sister with a medical bill because they need to stay on track. No to the lake house rental for a month in the summer. No to upgrading their cars, even though Daniel's has 160,000 miles and makes a weird noise when he turns left. Just one more year. Just a little more cushion. Just to be safe. And by the time Daniel actually retires at 65, they don't have $3.79 million. They have $5.5 million, maybe $6 million if the market's kind, which is incredible, which is more than they'll ever spend. Which means they sacrificed 20 years of actually living for a number that didn't change their retirement at all. Now compare that to another couple. We'll call them Vanessa and Troy. Same age as Daniel and Rebecca. Same income. Same portfolio size. Same retirement goals. Everything identical. But they make a different choice. They run the numbers at 38 and 45. They see that they're already on track. They see that their current savings, left alone, will grow into way more than they need. And instead of ignoring that information, they act on it. They don't stop saving completely. That would feel too extreme, too reckless. But they dial it back, way back. Instead of maxing out retirement accounts at $36,000 a year, they drop to $10,000. Just enough to keep the habit alive. Just enough to get the employer match. Just enough to feel like they're still being responsible. And they redirect the other $26,000. $10,000 a year goes into a dedicated travel fund. They start taking their kids to Europe, to Japan, to New Zealand, to places that will shape how their kids see the world. They're not staying in 5-star hotels. They're not flying first class, but they're going. They're making memories. They're having dinners in small towns in Italy where nobody speaks English, and the kids are trying to order gelato in broken Italian and everyone's laughing. Those nights matter. Those moments stick. Another $8,000 a year goes into home improvements. They remodel the kitchen. Not because they need to, but because Rebecca spends an hour a day in there, and it should be a space she actually enjoys. They build a deck in the backyard. They upgrade the master bathroom. They turn their house into a place they love being instead of a place they're waiting to leave. Another $5,000 goes into what they call the Yes Fund, concerts they want to see. A pottery class Rebecca's been curious about for years, helping Troy's brother with a down payment on his first house. A weekend trip to see Troy's college roommate who lives across the country. Spontaneous things, small, things that add up to a life that feels full instead of deferred. And another $3,000 goes into their kids' 529 plan because that's something they care about. The other $26,000 a year, gone, redirected from retirement to living. And you know what happens? They retire at the exact same age as Daniel and Rebecca, 65 and 58. With slightly less money in their accounts. Maybe $4.5 million instead of $6 million. Still way more than they need, still more than they'll ever spend. But they spent 20 years living like people who had money, instead of people who were hoarding it out of fear. They have memories, experiences, inside jokes from trips. A house they loved living in for decades, instead of just the last few years. Connection with their kids who saw their parents model what it looks like to actually enjoy life, instead of just preparing for it. And when they look back at their 40s and 50s, they don't regret a thing, because they didn't sacrifice their present for a future that was already secured. So how do you actually do this without screwing yourself? Here's the playbook. Step 1. Calculate your actual retirement number. Take your expected annual spending in retirement and multiply by 25. Be honest about this. Don't lowball it to make yourself feel better. Don't assume you'll suddenly need half of what you spend now. Most people's spending in retirement doesn't drop as much as they think. Include healthcare, which according to Fidelity averages around $315,000 per couple over retirement. Include travel. Include helping your family if that's something you care about. Include hobbies, gifts, home maintenance, all of it. This is your floor. Step 2. Project your current savings forward. Take your current portfolio balance. Multiply it by 1.06 to the power of however many years until you retire. If you're 40 and retiring at 65, that's 25 years. If you've got $700,000 saved, that becomes $3 million by 65 at 6% growth. $3 million, even if you never save another dime. Use a compound interest calculator if math isn't your thing. They're free online. Plug in your numbers and see what happens. Step 3. Compare those numbers. If your projected balance is significantly higher than your retirement number, you're done. You've won. You can stop saving for retirement. If it's close, maybe you keep going for another few years until you have more cushion. If you're short, you need to either save more, work longer, or adjust your retirement spending expectations. There's no shame in any of those choices. It's just math. And before I keep going, quick request. If you're finding this helpful, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It actually makes a difference in getting this content to people who need it. And honestly, that's why I make these videos, to cut through the noise and give you the real math without the hype. All right, back to it. Step 4. Redirect the money intelligently. Don't just blow it. Don't start buying stupid stuff because you feel rich. Don't finance a boat or lease a luxury car or drop $50,000 on crypto because you read a thread on Twitter. Redirect it toward things that matter, experiences with people you love, upgrading your daily quality of life in ways that compound, helping family in ways that strengthen relationships, building memories, the stuff that actually makes life worth living. Step 5. Set up a safety net before you stop. Make sure you have 3 to 6 months of expenses in an emergency fund. Research shows that 40% of Americans can't cover a $500 emergency. Don't be in that group. Make sure you've paid off high-interest debt, credit cards, personal loans, anything above 6 or 7% interest. If you're paying 15% on a credit card balance while saving for retirement, you're doing it backwards. Make sure you don't have any massive upcoming expenses that would derail the plan. Kids' college tuition, a new roof, medical procedures, plan for those separately. Step 6. Stress test your assumptions. Run the numbers with a 5% return instead of 6. Run them with 4% inflation instead of 3. See what happens if you live to 95 instead of 85. According to the Social Security Administration, a 65-year-old today has a decent chance of living into their mid-80s. 1 in 4 will live past 90. 1 in 10 past 95. So, longevity risk is real. If your plan still works under worse conditions, you're golden. If it doesn't, adjust. Step 7. Be suspicious of anyone trying to sell you something. Once you have money, the financial services industry will come for you. Wealth managers, insurance, salespeople, investment advisors. Some of them are great. Most of them just want recurring fees. Be very careful about who you trust with your money. And step 8. Reframe what money is for. Money isn't a score. It's not about having the biggest number when you die. It's about freedom. Options. The ability to say no to things you don't want and yes to things you do. If you've already hit the number that buys you that freedom, stop optimizing and start living. Here's the part nobody talks about. There are psychological traps that will try to keep you saving even when you don't need to. The first is fear of regret. There's always a voice in your head asking, what if we're wrong? What if the market crashes? What if inflation goes crazy? What if we live longer than we think? The pain of potentially running out of money in retirement feels so much worse than the pain of oversaving right now. And that's valid. it's a real concern. This is why so many people fall into what I call the one more year trap. You tell yourself, okay, just one more year of saving to be safe, but then that turns into 2 years, then 5, then 10. And before you know it, you've worked a whole extra decade because you were too scared to trust your own math. The way to fight this is to stress test your plan, run worst-case scenarios, see if it still works. If it does, you have permission to stop. The second trap is identity shift. For a lot of high savers, frugality and discipline becomes part of who they are. It's not just a habit. It's their identity. They're the person who saves, the responsible one, the disciplined one, and stopping feels like losing a piece of themselves. Like they're becoming someone reckless or lazy or financially irresponsible. I saw this with my dad. He couldn't change his mindset even when he had way more than enough. He'd be eating frozen meals in a paid-off house with a portfolio that could fund a completely different lifestyle, because his identity was locked into scarcity. The mental shift from saver to spender is harder than any spreadsheet. And the third trap is opportunity cost of time. You can always make more money, but you can't make more time. Every dollar you save beyond what you need is a dollar you're not using to enjoy your life right now. And if you're way ahead on retirement savings, every additional dollar you put away is robbing you of experiences, memories, moments with people you love, things that matter way more than having an extra $200,000 in your account when you're 80. You don't take the money with you, and nobody's going to remember you for your brokerage balance. They're going to remember the trips you took together, the meals you shared, the time you were present instead of grinding. Here's the thing. Retirement planning isn't just about maximizing your net worth. It's about maximizing your life. And if you can get to retirement safely without sacrificing your entire present, you should absolutely do that, because the real catch isn't whether you can stop saving. It's whether you'll give yourself permission to. The system is designed to keep you anxious. Banks want you uncertain. Apps want you chasing higher numbers. Advisors want recurring revenue. And your brain wants certainty in an uncertain world. But if you've done the math, if you've stress-tested the assumptions, if you know your current portfolio is already going to grow into more than you need, then stopping isn't reckless. It's smart. It's living like someone who built wealth for a reason. Not to die with the high score, but to actually use it. And here's the reality check. According to research from the Employee Benefit Research Institute, the average retiree dies with somewhere between $283,000 and $315,000 still in their accounts. Most people oversave. Most people sacrifice more than they need to. Most people work longer than necessary. And they leave money on the table that could have bought years of freedom, joy, and presence with the people they love. So here's my challenge to you. Run the numbers. Calculate your retirement target. Project your current savings forward. See where you actually stand, and if you're already past the line, give yourself permission to ease off. Redirect that money toward your life. Take the trip. Remodel the house. Help the people you care about. Be present. Because the real tragedy isn't running out of money in retirement. It's spending your whole life preparing for a future you never get to enjoy. And if this video helped you see that differently, do me a favor and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment about your own situation. Hit the like button if you want more content like this. It genuinely helps. And if you want to go deeper on retirement planning, I've got a video on the 4% rule and how much you actually need to retire that I'll link in the description. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.